Safety in the supply chain is so important, and you may have come across the term chain of responsibility. What's all that about? This week, we are going to be talking to an expert in chain of responsibility. Ursula Kelly is back with us, and that's coming right up. So welcome, Ursula. You're going to tell us about chain of responsibility.
Hi, Rob. Yes, yes, I am. It is a hot topic, and it has been for many years. So I thought it's about time we touch on it.
Okay, so the dumb question to start with, what is chain of responsibility? What's it all about?
Chain of responsibility is a legislation that ensures everyone, every party in the supply chain, does the right thing, basically, to put it bluntly, to make sure that every party does everything they can to ensure safety of their employees and general public as well.
So I suppose that's come about because in the past, people didn't take responsibility, and you would end up with, like a truck accident, and the truck driver might be blamed, or the transport company is. Is that kind of what has brought all this about?
Absolutely, 100%. Some studies have indicated that quite often those incidents and accidents on the road are not actually driver's fault. It is very easy to assume so because he's the guy or the girl on the road. They load the truck, they're responsible, but that's not the case at all. It came to knowledge that quite often what happens, there is a lot of pressure put on drivers from senders, receivers, clients, schedulers, and then the regulator thought, what can we possibly do to ensure that we eliminate that sort of risk? And that's how the chain of responsibility came around.
Interesting. I was only watching a documentary on TV the other night about this, and how, with the big increase in home deliveries, delivery drivers are having pressure put on them to work longer and longer hours. And there was a case study in Korea where, some of the delivery drivers are working 14, 15 hours a day. So really, chain of responsibility would put it back onto the employer then. If there's an accident or something like that, it's not the driver's fault. You're pushing them too much.
100%. And, it is easy for everyone to say the driver should have said no if they didn't feel comfortable with, performing a lengthy task or driving too long. But we all know that's not the reality. People need jobs. It is just really difficult to say no to your boss as we speak. That is the reason why the legislation has been introduced to the industry.
So what are some of the misconceptions about chain of responsibility? Because it's been around a little while, but there's still a lot of misunderstanding, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. The main misconception about it is that it only applies to those who are on the road. If I'm not a courier driver, if I'm not a transport company owner, if I don't own my trucks, therefore I'm not. I don't have to be compliant, and that is the biggest mistake, because whether your transport is in-house, whether it's outsourced, whether you have never seen a truck loading your goods, for the past 12 months, it doesn't matter. You still have to take steps to ensure that all risks are mitigated. And that is definitely the number one common mistake people make, that they just don't know that they need to be compliant.
So if I'm the managing director of a company and we're sending goods out, via a transport company, as an accident, what you're saying is it's my responsibility.
100%, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. You need to do everything you possibly can to ensure that you are running a safe operation.
And there's been some fairly high-profile prosecutions, I think, haven't there, where very senior executives have been taken to court.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been actually quite a few of those in the recent times, and I like that it's been brought to public, because it just makes people more aware, makes everyone stop and think, like, hang on a second, we're selling goods, we're a manufacturer, wholesaler, whatever it is. We've got guys coming in to our yard to pick up product, whatever. Are we actually a part of this? Is there something we could be doing to ensure safety? I think these are really good questions to be asked. Unfortunately, some need to learn the hard way.
Yeah. So what would be another sort of key misconception or mistake that people make?
I guess not understanding your responsibilities. People quite often are, either they're not aware at all that the legislation exists, but if they are, they think, well, that's not necessarily my responsibility, or they think their responsibilities are less than they are. So what I would say is, education is a very, very important part of compliance.
Okay. So what can people do if they're worried about these things? What can they do to make sure they're compliant, that they kind of know their responsibilities?
Like I said, education, knowing what the legislation is, what it means, and stay up to date with the changes, because it does, like any legislation really, it likes to change now and then. So it's good to know what changes are being applied. Do an assessment or an audit of your current operation, whether it's going to be an external auditor or you're going to get someone within your organization to run that audit. Know what are we doing currently? Are we doing everything right? Are there areas that we could improve? Have a good management system in place as well, because it's not just about doing it. As with any legislation, the process has to be documented and recorded.
Yeah. So I know that you're licensed to do these audits. Do they take a long time? What's involved?
It really depends on size of the business. And it really depends on how compliant the business is, because we might be working with clients where things are almost perfect. We just need to go through legislation changes, make sure they're applied in the system. But we do see clients that pretty much start from scratch, and that takes a lot of time. But I always say it is definitely worth the investment.
Yeah, it keeps you out of jail, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And it's I always say we shouldn't be looking at it just that way, oh, it's going to keep me out of jail, or keep me out of getting fines. But it is actually for the general public safety, because you don't want to be going to bed at night thinking something fell off a trailer yesterday because we didn't restrain it properly.
Oh, look, I would agree with you 100% that, it's about the safety of your staff. It's about safety of the public, other 100%. Road users for road transport. But ultimately, if you're a senior executive in a business, you can get hefty fines and go to jail.
Absolutely. And fines are, quite huge actually, for individuals as well as for businesses. So it's definitely something that, any business and any individual should try and avoid.
So we're based in Australia. I suppose, people are watching this around the world. Is there similar legislation around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I was having a conversation with someone from the Middle East the other day about shipping containers and what they can do to ensure chain of responsibility compliance. As you know, I've got family history of driving in Europe, and that chain of responsibility in Europe is also a thing. So whatever we call it, it is it is real. It is here. It is we have to be compliant no matter where in the world you are.
Yeah, so in most countries there is a version of this. So, if you're not in Australia or elsewhere, do make sure that you look up your local legislation and make sure you're complying with that. And any last tip before we go?
Any last tip? Just Google chain of responsibility now if you never heard about it. That would be the first thing I would do. And Rob, you will be surprised how many people I talk to and they still never heard of it.
Really?
So absolutely. It's quite scary at times, but education, number one. Just if you've never heard of it, Google it now and start making yourself aware of what you need to do.
And for those particularly executives in business here in Australia, maybe if you don't mind, I'll put your LinkedIn connection down below, and if people need some help or want to ask some questions, they can reach out to you.
Always happy to help.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.